Hush Pooch Designs, and today's video I'm going to show you how to make a slip-on collar for your dog that looks like a patriotic American flag. Now this is a free pattern on my blog. It's called the Slip-On Patriotic Dog Collar, and I'll put that link down in the notes underneath the video so you can check the stitch counts and things. Now I wrote this pattern about 5 or 6 years ago, and the original pattern was just a red and white striped collar like this, and then we added a star. But I decided to, when I updated the pattern, to add a little bit of blue. It's stitched exactly the same. The only difference is you start with the blue and then switch to the red and white for the collar. And then, of course, make a star and add that onto that field of blue. You can make the collar either way. Now, this pattern will work for any size dog or pet because you're going to need to measure your dog or cat or any animal's neck and then adjust the pattern for the length that you need. To make this pattern, we're going to be using our H hook today. You're going to need a needle, weaving in your ends and sewing on your star, and of course a pair of scissors. And the yarn that we're using today is a new yarn from Hobby Lobby called Soft and Sleek. And it's a really nice soft yarn. And we'll be using these colors here: red, white, blue, and gold. Now you don't have to use that yarn. You can use any worsted weight number 4 yarn, like a Super Saver or just a regular Hobby Lobby I Love This yarn, or any worsted weight yarn that you want to use. They all work great as long as it's a number 4. And you need the 4 colors, of course. And it doesn't take very much, as you can see, to make this fun collar. And the neat thing about this collar is you don't have to take off their existing collar that has their tags on it. You just make this collar and slip it on because it's a decorative collar to help celebrate any of the patriotic holidays. And the truth is, you can make it in any colors that you want. You don't have to make it in these colors. So let's gather up our supplies and we'll get started. All right, let's get started. We're going to begin with our blue yarn because we're going to be stitching this blue portion first. So we're going to make our slip knot. And then we're going to chain 9 chains. There's 3, 6, and 9. Now, to adjust the collar to any size dog, you're going to need to measure your dog's neck around and then add 1 inch. Rosie's neck is 9 inches, so I'm going to add 1 inch, which makes it 10 inches. Each inch will consist of 1, 2, and 3 rows because we're going to begin stitching here and stitching around. And so you're going to need a collar that is 3 times your measurement. In other words, Rosie's neck is 9 inches plus 1 inch for comfort is 10 inches. So I'm going to multiply times 3 because 3 rows equal 1 inch. So 3 times 10 is 30. So I'm going to need 30 rows around to fit Rosie's neck. Now we're going to be doing the blue portion first. Don't adjust this for the length. You do your adjustment in the red and white striping portion. All right, so we have stitched our 9 chains. We're going to begin stitching in the second chain from the hook. Here's your first chain, here's your second. We're going to go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. We're stitching single crochets for the entire portion all the way around. Doesn't matter what color, it's all stitched in single crochets. So You put your hook through the chain and you pull up a loop. You'll have those 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through both of those loops. So we started in the second chain from the hook and we're stitching 1 single crochet across. This will give us 8 single crochets. So here is 8 single crochets. We're going to chain 1, and chain 1 does not count as a stitch. It's merely just a turning chain so that our work lays nice when we turn it. For row 2, we're going to place 1 single crochet in each single crochet across. And the number of stitches across each row will never change for the whole dog collar. We will have 8 single crochets on every row, no matter the color. 8 single crochets, chain 1, and turn. Now, for the blue portion of our collar, we're going to stitch 7 rows of single crochet. So we've stitched 2, and we need to stitch up so that we have a total of 7 rows of single crochet. We don't want to change the length here. We want all the collars to have the same amount of blue. So we're going to stitch 7 rows of blue single crochet. We've stitched 2, so we need to do 5 more rows. So 1 single crochet in each single crochet across, chain 1 and turn for a total of 7 rows of the blue single crochets. We stitched 7 rows of the blue in single crochet, and now we're going to cut our yarn. And we're going to switch to our red. So we're not going to chain 1 at the end of this last row. You're going to do your chain 1s after you do a color change. So at the end of our 7th row, we're going to add in our red, and then chain 1. And make sure you snug those down, and then we're going to turn. Now, the way the red and white rows work is we're going to stitch 2 rows of red, change to white, 2 rows of white, and change to red. And it really is easy to do. So we're going to stitch right in that first single crochet and stitch a row of red single crochets across. And remember, your stitch count doesn't change. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to turn, and then we'll stitch a row of red back across. All right, we're in our last single crochet, but don't chain 1 because we're going to join in our white yarn. Do not cut your red yarn. We're going to leave our red yarn attached and carry it up across the side, and I'll show you that when we turn. So we joined our white yarn. We're going to chain 1. We're going to make sure those are snug down so we don't have loose stitches there, and we're going to turn, and we're leaving our red yarn attached. So again, we're going to stitch 1 single crochet. In each single crochet, we're going to chain 1 and turn and stitch another row of single crochets. I'm at the end. I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and then stitch a row of white single crochets back across the white. There we go. Need a little yarn out there. All right, so now I'm to my last white single crochet. We're going to stitch that single crochet, and then we're going to let the white yarn drop down, and we're going to grab that red yarn again. We're going to pull the red yarn back in, snug that white strip down, the white loop down, and then we're going to chain 1, and you'll see on the side you'll have a line where, not a strip, but a loop across, and that's the way you'll carry it across each row. So now we're back to the red, and we're going to stitch 2 rows of red and do the same thing, and we'll repeat this process of 2 reds and 2 whites, carrying our yarn on the side until it's the length that we need. 1 single crochet in each single crochet across, chain 1 and turn, and change back to our white yarn. I've stitched a few more rows of the red and white, and I wanted to show you how the side should look. This is where we've carried our yarn, making sure it's not too tight but snug down so that it's not a problem. And after we get done and it's all hooked together, this row here that we're going to add of the gold will cover those sides. So continue to stitch red and white rows until it's the length that you need for your dog. I've stitched enough rows where my collar measures 10 inches. So I have my 2 ends here. I'm going to go ahead and cut off my red one because that's the row that I didn't end on. We're going to leave the one that we ended on attached because we'll use that to sew the ends together. So I'll go ahead and cut off the red. That out of the way. And we'll weave that one in a little bit. So here's the one I ended on. Go ahead and chain that one down just to snug it down. And then we're going to put the 2 ends together. Line them up. And then we'll stitch 8 single crochets going through both sides of the end of our collar. First side, second side, single crochet. Now this is the inside, so we will be flipping it over, making sure everything's lined up. There we go. One more stitch. So now we're all sewed together. Cut that off. And then we'll have to weave in these ends. And I will tell you, when weaving in the ends, I always use a needle if I absolutely can. If I'm on a trip or something and I forgot to pack a needle, that's different. But to me, it's really important to use a needle, especially if you're going to make something that's going to be used a lot. And this, of course, is going to be on a dog, so I want to make sure that those ends do not come out. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch a few on the end. And one of the keys to getting a good weave in is to go in stitches and the fibers, opposed to just going in the holes. And then go one way, turn around and go back the other way, and then turn around and go back the other way if you can 3 times, because I think that gives you a nice good weave in that's not going to come out. Now I need to tidy up the rest of this, and then I'm going to show you how to add the golden trim. Once we have our collar all tidied up, we're going to flip it over to the right side, because this is the front side of our collar, and I like to set it like this so that it kind of looks like the flag. Alright, so now we're going to take our gold yarn, or whatever yarn you're using for your gold, and we're going to join it right here on the blue. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to place single crochets all the way around on both sides of the collar. And sometimes putting a single crochet row on the side of stitches, rows of stitches, can be a little confusing. And what I do is I try to go in the stitch itself and not the hole. So here's the stitch. I'm going to go right through that stitch. And with doing rows of single crochet, if you try to put one single crochet in the end of each of the rows, you get a pretty good looking neat appearance. So one single crochet at the end of each of the single crochet rows, and this, we started on this edge that has where we carried over. And make sure that you go around those stitches so that you can cover them up. And you end up with a really pretty neat row. So we're going to do single crochets all the way around and then join to the top of this single crochet. Then we'll do this side. We'll do one single crochet in the end of each row all the way around again. I stitched all the way around this side with the gold trim, and then I stitched all the way around the top. But I wanted to show you a good way to hide that last stitch when you're stitching around like that. So I've done my last single crochet. I'm going to join to the first single crochet with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to take my hook out of this loop and go in the next stitch and just pull that loop to the back side. And then I'll cut my string and tie off to the inside. And that just gives you a much neater appearance on the front. Sometimes it can be a little bit bumpy if you don't do it that way. Alright, I'm just going to lap these over together. And then we need to weave those in, and that's the collar by itself without the star. So the next thing we need to do is make the star. To make the little star, it's really, really easy. Move those back. We're going to chain 3. Here's our slip knot. And then we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to stitch 5 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. So there's that first chain. We're going to go right in that second chain and stitch 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch, and then we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to go to the next single crochet and stitch a single crochet. Then we're going to chain 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we'll go to the next single crochet and stitch a single crochet. Again, chain 5, single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 5, single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 5, and single crochet in the last single crochet. And that's our star. Alright, so let's tie off and make sure we leave ourselves a little bit of yarn for sewing it on. So we'll go ahead and pull our yarn, grab our needle, and we're going to turn it over because we want to close up this little hole here. So we'll put on the yarn that we began with on our needle, and we're just going to go around those 5 single crochets that we started with. There we go. And just gently tug that in and close that hole so we don't have a hole in the center of our star. And then we'll just weave that in so it's not sticking out. And go ahead and clip off that yarn. Alright, so now let's put the tail that we left onto our needle, and we're going to sew our little star onto the blue portion. So what I do is I take my needle and I go right down the center. And I just make a couple of stitches like this, just to make sure the center's on good. And then I go out to each point of the star. And this is just going to kind of help shape it so that it looks like a star. I mean, it looks like a little flower, so we need to try to make those little points pointed. And we can do this just by making a couple of stitches. So there's our star. And then I just go right back up into the middle. And then go straight back down. That way everything's shaped and laying nicely. Turn it over and just weave it in. There we go. And there's our dog collar. Now we have one for Maximo and one for Rosie.